our mission in the business is to be the best running supplement brand in the world, and we define best by a number of sort of trackable things. The bigger we are and the more that we grow and all those sorts of things, the more positive impact we have on people's lives. Everything that you want is on the other side of hard, and I really, really believe that. That's really shaped the Puresport direction, the For the Long Run narrative, which we can talk about, because I think all those best things in life are those things where you have that long-term view.
I wondered how you translate that into your leadership.
I didn't fully recognise the similarities between sport and business, and I did have a bit of a moment about 2 years in where I was like, oh, it sort of clicked for me, and that really changed how I thought about stuff. But over the next 5 years, and hopefully longer, I think there's going to be nothing cooler in the world than being healthy. And I think that is something that's really powerful. There's this special thing that happens when humans exercise together.
It was when you started posting about For the Long Run that I was like, this is my kind of brand.
I think one of the things that's so interesting about health and wellness right now is...
Welcome to Create Brave. Daniel Temm, the CEO of Puresport. I am absolutely delighted that you've come to join us in the studio today, and you're going to share with us so much the story of Puresport, your own journey, your mindset, your beliefs, and some things that I really want to get into as well about authenticity and values. And I know from previous conversations that you and I have had that you have so much to share on those things. So first of all, thank you so much for coming, and I'm very, very grateful. I would really like you to give a bit of an intro into your background, if that's okay, and to hand the floor to you to kind of tell us a little bit about how you became in the role that you are.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you very much for having me. Those are all topics that I'm so passionate about. So I'm excited for the next 45 minutes or an hour. So my name's Daniel Temm. I'm the CEO of Puresport, but where sort of life started for me was in New Zealand. I was born in Auckland, the capital city, and then we moved to a place called Rotorua, where I grew up. If anybody listening goes there, it smells like eggs, so you'll think about maybe me mentioning that. And anyone I do meet who's gone there is like, oh, is that the place where it smells? And throughout my childhood, I was just like so obsessed about sport. I just loved everything about it, playing football, water polo, rugby, anything I could, and through that I really sort of decided reasonably I'd really like sport to be a big part of my life. I was probably a better cricketer than I was a rugby player, so when I finished school in New Zealand, I decided I wanted to come to England to be a professional cricketer, and I came over and I tried to give that a go, but it didn't go very well, and I ended up playing for my local rugby club. And I think looking back to that situation now, you might think the same about some of your earlier memories, but when I was 18, and you think you're this grown up and you've got your driver's license, I've got my passport, I'm going off to the other side of the world. And as I meet 18-year-olds now, or I think back to myself in that time as a 34-year-old, I'm like, that is just so crazy that I put my cricket bag on my back, I headed off, mum was crying at the airport, and I was like, why is she crying? I'm just going over to figure a few things out. But I think that experience meant that I just grew up so fast. I think in New Zealand we're very lucky because of the lifestyle of the country, the safeness, loads of those things. We are exposed to so much more individual living or sort of responsibility at a much earlier age. When we were 15 and we could get our driver's license, we were going off and spending weekends away from home and all those sorts of things. So when I meet lots of people now, they're like, that's so crazy that you did that, and now you've been here 16 years. But at the time, it just felt like, oh, that's what you do. So when I came over, the cricket didn't go that well for me, but ended up, playing a bit of local rugby club, jumping up a few clubs. And when I went to a club in Otley, I was working on the side. It wasn't professional rugby, it was an amateur league. I started working for a local businessman there who had his fingers in lots of different pies. And I just sort of realised that I was really passionate about that. And I'd been passionate about business through school, doing all the business, economics, all those sorts of things. But that's where I probably really found that passion. And then I went up to Newcastle. I got the opportunity to go up there and go professional. Did that for 9 years. And I just to do sport for a job, I think was just such a privilege and something I just really enjoyed. I was lucky enough to dabble in a few different environments, which I think we can maybe talk about, but sort of shaped my leadership style, what I think about teams and stuff like that. But also, while I was doing that, I knew it just wasn't going to be forever. I knew I wasn't the best player there. I was never going to be the best player there. In fact, I was probably beyond my ability, but I sort of was rewarded for being a hard worker and all those sorts of things. And then when I was at my last club, just before that, I sort of stumbled across, he was actually a friend from a previous club, but he'd founded Puresport. And he was asking me about another business that I had at the time and how I thought about stuff, how I did forecasting and things. And I was like, oh gosh, this, at the time was a CBD oil business. This could be something really interesting here. But I think what was so interesting to me was like the founding premise of the business. And that was to sort of take a stand against the quick fix mentality, around how we think about products, how we think about our health, how we think about life. And I joined that business when it was about 10 months old. We sort of worked out a deal. I bought in and things like that. And then in February 2020, went into lockdown, and I've been doing 8 days a week of Puresport ever since. So that's an accelerated version of how I'm here today.
That's a very sped up version of a huge amount of experience, and I'm sure overcoming a lot of challenges along the way as well. What I'm really interested in is that moment when that premise of Puresport that was communicated to you in the way it was, that was about against quick fixes and doing things the right way, even if it's the hard way. And I'm interested to know if you think that the reason that resonated with you is because you were a sportsman, because you had that inbuilt into you already.
Yeah, I think I have in my Instagram bio that I'm a delusional optimist. And I think I have this kind of like optimism about life that anybody can be anything, and I really feel I see the best in everyone. That comes back to bite you sometimes, but I think overall it sees you much better off than the other way round. And I think through my whole life, and I think this was kind of driven from my childhood, is like I've always believed if you work hard at something, then it will give you rewards, and that may take a day, a week, a month, 10 years for it to really see that. So when I heard this premise about like the quick fix mentality, like that was something that probably like hit a stroke a chord so strong with me, because I'm just someone who's just like has a like real stance in life against that there's overnight success, that you do this thing, it's going to give you a six pack, or that you can move to Dubai and you're going to be a millionaire, and all those kinds of things that we hear about now and the world's sort of obsessed with. And I think through that time there, like social media has accelerated that so much, because we open the end of our wrist and there's someone there pumping down the phone at us telling us that you can have this and you can have it tomorrow. So I think that was the thing that really like stroke a chord with me, and the fact that it was doing it through sport, putting good things in people's body, that it had a much more long-term view on life, I think was really big. And I think like when I think back to those things in my childhood, that why I'm sort of like shaped like that, my dad was just like always such a hard worker. Yeah. He also loved sport, and he was very supportive of my brother and I playing sport, always trying to make sure that we could get to trainings or do this and stuff, but also like made us really stand on our own 2 feet with it. If we wanted a new cricket bat, he would only ever pay half. We had to come up with the other half from mowing the lawns or delivering papers or, all that sort of stuff. But I guess like some of my memories that I think about were, he was a lawyer and then a barrister and then a QC. He used to come home after work, have dinner with us at the table, have a family dinner, and then he'd jump back in the car and go back to the office, and then we'd go to bed and we wouldn't see him again that night and stuff. And I think at the time I didn't know that. It's just like, oh, Dad's got a big case on, he's busy. But I think seeing that and being around that all the time, and on the flip side again, like my mum and my dad divorced when I was 5, and that meant that mum, was a solo mum. She had the 3 of us a lot of the time, and she was in the hospitality industry, always working on weekends and stuff. And we used to mountain bike on the weekends, and we used to, let's go to Mum's cafe, and she might, let us have some pancakes. And then we used to roll in there with 2 or 3 friends on the mountain bikes. And even just seeing that, sat at the back of the restaurant, pancakes, Mum's running around on a Saturday serving all these people and stuff. I obviously I didn't know it at the time, but thinking back now, I think that really shaped a lot of like who I am. And I really love the quote. Maybe I said it to you when we spoke. Is like, everything that you want is on the other side of hard. Yeah. And I really, really believe that. And I think that's really shaped the Puresport direction, the for the long run narrative, which we can talk about, because I think all those best things in life are those things where you have that long term view, and that's where my real resonance with the quick fix mentality has come from.
I love that, because it's very much like on reflection that you look back at your childhood and you realise the lessons that were being shown to you without you even realising, because obviously this was just your childhood. You were just having your tea, and then your dad would go back to work, and you were just seeing all these things, and actually what's being permeated through to you is shaping who you are. And the kind of person that packed up his cricket bag and flies across the world at the age of 18, not quite knowing what's on the other side, but just thinking, as long as I work hard, it will probably be okay. And that's incredible. Did your family kind of share that optimism when you started on that journey? Did they, and what do they make of it now?
Yeah, interesting. I think they always, like, they used to call me like Whirlwind Dan, because I was just like all over. Like, I had 10 jobs by the time I was 18 and I left, washing dishes, delivering papers, working on farms, spraying weeds, doing hospitality, everything. And like, I was just always doing that because I wanted to be saving money to buy cricket bats or go on rugby trips, or, go away with my friends and all that sort of stuff. So I think like they always knew that I was going to be someone who I've never been someone who's like scared of giving something a go, and I'll just give anything a go, and I'll just go full on into it. So I think that they've always believed, like, Dan will just smash his head against the wall until he finds a way, and he'll find a way somewhere. And I think if you spoke to anybody that I grew up with about me and my upbringing, or someone who's spent a lot of time between 18 and 25 probably, I think they would all tell you now that I've massively overachieved, both in rugby but also now with Puresport, based on the skill set that they thought I had at the time. Like, even with rugby, I just knew I wasn't going to be a very that good a rugby player, in terms of I knew my skills weren't as good as other people. I wasn't as big enough to play Premiership rugby. And I'm just going to be so fit, and I'm just going to try really, really hard. There's actually like a bit of a funny story where when I first went up to Newcastle, I had to get the trainer because I didn't have a car. And the guy who I was going to get a lift to training with, he actually decided he wasn't going to go until a bit later, so I was going to be late. So I ran to training. It was like 3 miles. And the coach was like, "Why are you sweating when you got here to the gym?" And I was like, "I actually ran here." And they're like, "What?" And I was like, "Oh, I've run to training." They're like, "You got a full day of training?" I was like, "Oh, it's fine. And then the head coach came and sat with me. He's like, "Oh, Dan, you need to put on about 10 kilos here, so no more running to training." But like, I was just like, it doesn't matter, like, off I go, sort of a thing. And I think that's also like if you ask me, do I think 10 years ago I'm capable of doing this? I think I'm right where I belong, because I just believe that if you do anything and you keep showing up and you keep putting in the effort, and like, we're so capable of learning new things and all that sort of stuff, I think I'm probably like right where I should be.
But that's probably also because, just interpreting what you said there, that you can have natural talent which can propel you into a certain place in life or to a certain position, or you can have a certain kind of grit and resilience that I think, it's something you've said before as well, is like a muscle that you keep working and keep getting stronger, and that will also get you to where you need to be. And obviously you really see yourself as like the latter, like I work hard to get where I need to get to. I
actually think that's such an underrated skill that anybody in life can adopt. And I think what's so interesting about it is running encompasses it in every single time you step out the door. And I think that's why we all, like anyone who runs, will talk a lot about the mental benefits, the physical benefits and things. But there is not one person who steps out the door and goes on a run, and at some point in that run doesn't have some thought like, oh gosh, my knee's a bit sore today, or oh, I didn't think it was going to be this windy, or oh, I was going to do 10, maybe I should just do 7, all that sort of stuff. And in a run, but also at any time in life that you do this, every time you tell that little voice in your head to go away, you're building up that resilience for the next time. Because I go out then the next day and it's really windy, and I go, oh, well, I said I was windy yesterday, and I was maybe going to do 7, but I did do 10, so I know I can do 10 today. And you're just building it. And I think that is something that, I'm not an advocate for like push yourself to the limit all the time, or like, and sometimes it's the smarter decision, like we were talking about before, to do that. But I think that people doing that hard things in fitness, in work, in all those situations, they underestimate how much that's building you as a person for those future events.
Yeah, and people who listen to the podcast or have had any interaction with me in any kind of area of life will know that that's so resonant with me, and particularly from a running angle. And I think the great thing about running and and proving that little voice in your head every time you go out is that you then can relate that into real life.
Yeah.
So I always think about it as being like just the building blocks of this toolkit that you can always go to. So therefore, you can be nervous if you're going to a difficult meeting at work, or you've got to have a tough conversation with someone, or come on a podcast, and you can just go back to that box and prove to yourself, well, I've done hard things before and I can do them again. And I think there's nothing greater once you've almost learnt that life hack to keep stacking those bricks. It just can really take you kind of to the next level.
Yeah, and I think as we get older, we realise, stepping back and looking at the wall isn't actually that good.
Yeah.
It's thinking about, here was my brick and I did this and that was my run and stuff. Yeah. And at a young age, and it's commonly talked about between World Cup winners and Olympic gold medalists and all these sorts of things, like that was actually a soulless moment for them because they'd achieved that thing, and what was next. But I think, it's all those late night runs, it's all those things. And I really love this. Have you seen the film Air about the Jordans?
Oh no, I haven't.
So it's a spin-off section of that section during Nike when they did the Jordan deal.
Yeah.
And throughout that Jordan deal, Phil Knight was really resistant to doing it, and because they wanted Jordan, and then Jordan's mum negotiated that he wanted equity, and they were like, we just don't do that. Those deals don't get done around here. And the guy within Nike, who's played by Mark Wahlberg in the film, he's really pushing to do this deal because he's like, this is the guy, he's going to be the guy. And Phil Knight's like, no, we're not doing it. And then one night, in this, I don't know if that happened like this, and it doesn't talk about it in Shoe Dog, but he's sleeping on the couch and he comes in and he's like, let's do the deal. Yeah. And he says to him, why? What changed your mind? You were so thing. And he said to him, I went for a run. And I actually thought that was just such a something that just like landed with me straight away, because so many of those thoughts and decisions and tough conversations that you might have to go into, actually you do think about them out there, and sometimes they really like come to moments of clarity. And
that just takes the value of running, but more important than that, the process. And elevates it, as opposed to it being the end goal, like you said about looking back at the wall or crossing the finishing line. And those things are then translated into embedding that into those processes into everyday life. So it is the daily grind that ends up being something that's worth celebrating, as opposed to it being the peaks and the highs and the lows. And I wondered how you translate that into your leadership of a team and of a business, because that can be a really hard thing to you feel this way and this is part of who you are, but to try and build a team that is in it for the long run and that stays dedicated every day and keeps showing up even though things are hard. And how do you build a team that can kind of manage that behaviour as well?
Yeah, I think that's so. I didn't at the start of my business life and then Puresport, I didn't fully recognise the similarities between sport and business, and I did have a bit of a moment about 2 years in where I was like, it sort of clicked for me, and that really changed how I thought about stuff. One of the things I'm so jealous of from sport and into business is like success is so well defined in sport, and also the cadence of it is so quick. Like you rock up on a Monday, you make a strategy for that week, you train during the week, the whole team's aligned to what the strategy is, the outcome that you're looking for. You play on the Saturday, if you won or lost, you think about it on the Sunday, you roll back in on the Monday, you talk about it, and then you re-strategize for the week ahead.
Yeah.
Whereas in business, you have quarterly, annual goals and stuff, and it's much harder to get everyone aligned on, like, in that same way. And also in sport, like, you have a bad game, you lose, everyone forgets about it and you're off. Whereas in business, things can like really like linger a lot more. I think the other thing about it, which I didn't recognize when I stepped into business, was when you're in a rugby changing room and you look around, there's 40 blokes in there, 50 blokes in there, you think everyone's so different because you're like, he likes this music and he dresses this way and he drinks those kind of coffees and whatever. But what you have in that room is people who are 95% similar, all highly competitive, all very masculine, all like combat, contact sort of stuff. And when you step into the business world, you've got 18-year-old people, it's their first job out of uni, right through to, people in their 40s with 3 kids, and that variance is so wide. So what I realized that was really easy there, which is maybe hard to translate, is like getting everybody aligned to the same thing. And I actually was really lucky 3 weeks ago, my friend made his debut for Bath. He'd been at Gloucester and he moved to Bath. And afterwards, when they get capped, they invite the families into the changing room. And so I got to go into the changing room as part of his family. It was a tiny away changing room at Harlequins, would have been this big, and would have been 50 people in there, and just dead silent. These guys have just been out, they've just beaten Harlequins in an away game. People are bleeding, there's massive eyes, it's like everyone's sweating, it's just silent. And then the DOR there, a guy called Johan, is doing a talk about, we're creating a special environment here. We only let a very small amount of people into our environment, and when you come in, it's a special place to be. And, we're building something that's going to be around for a lot longer than the players in this room and this sort of thing. And then he said, Chris, you come into the group this year, like as someone who's had a lot of rugby experience, leadership, like you've gelled with the group really well and whatever, and like, congratulations, you're, Bath number 265 cap or whatever it was. And the room just erupted. Everyone up clapping. And we were sat on the floor because there's no space. But, oh my gosh, there's all these people. And I just was like, it was just so... such an incredible moment, and I think what those guys won't realize is like that they're doing that once a few times a year now with new people joining the team, and I think like how does that translate into business? And there is ways that you can do it, but you can't do it necessarily like in the same way. So I think the biggest things that I really try and carry over is business is a team sport, and lots of people in business don't really know that. And the example that I give of that is, in team sport, you'll do anything for the team. Sometimes you have to sit on the bench. Sometimes somebody gets injured in another position and you have to go and play that position because it's what's best for the team. You're all working towards the same goal. Sometimes you have to train somebody to do something that you would want them to be doing, etc. But in business, there's a lot of ego. There's a lot of self-progression. You might be there because you're trying to do something for yourself and things. I think inherent selfishness in humans is just it's part of who we are, and that I think it's actually an important part of progression. But when ego and doing something for yourself overtakes what's important for the team, that becomes a real issue. So that's something that we always talk about. We're a we business, what an I business, and we have a very team first mentality. I think the other thing that I really know is that, people need to know what they're doing and where they're going. In a team, you're like, we want to win this week, but we want to finish here this month, and we want to finish here in the table, and that gets people going. No one wants to come to work for 10 hours a day and believe that what they're doing is a waste of time. Yeah. As humans, we need to work, we need to do stuff, we need to feel that fulfillment that what we're doing is right, we're not just wasting our time. So that's another thing that we really talk about, like how do we make sure that everyone in the team, their ideas are heard, that they feel part of it, that whatever their little cog is, whether they're in the office, we have some remote people and stuff like that, they're contributing to the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is something that actually scares us. Yeah. So that's something as well that I think is easily transferable from team sport into business.
Do you know what? That's so helpful for me to hear all of that, because I'm growing a business at the moment. Our business is growing quite significantly, even just over the past six months. And one of the things that I've always found difficult, I'm finding difficult, is that when we bring new people in, and I bring new people into a specific team, and I'm very excited about that because I know exactly what that means for the business and how that's going to fill a gap or add new skills or enable us to do more and do things better. And sometimes it's easy to forget that the existing individuals in that team, their first thought is, well, what about me? Yeah. What about the impact on me? And I'm like, well, no, this is super exciting because it means that your team is growing. But actually there's still that sense of whether it's selfishness or insecurity or not, because they're not aware of what that vision is and it's not being communicated to them. That's where I find that things are very difficult to manage, and without that clarity, without that proper communication to people, people do then end up feeling like, well, where do I fit in, and what's the implication of that to me? And I see it in my own business, and it's something that I'm constantly trying to really think about, like, how do we ensure that there is a clear vision and that everybody understands the vision, and then they know exactly how they fit into the vision, regardless of how we grow. And it's definitely a challenge.
It's one of the most important things, but it's not easy to do.
No.
Again, I think one of the other things that I was something I got to carry over from sport that people who don't go through that find difficult is change. Yeah. And in a professional sports team, the team changes on average 20% every year. Yeah. You got a group of 50 people, 10 people go at the end of the season, 10 new people come in, and that change it does a few things to you. It allows you to know that change is okay and that it's important for like driving growth and things like that. But also it lets you know, like when those 10 new people come in, like, hey, they're new here. I need to go for coffees with them. I need to make sure they know the game plan. I need to make sure all these things because I want to win the league. Yeah. And if these 10 people don't know what I want to do, what we're trying to do, then we're not going to win the league. Yeah. So again, that like embedding them in. But one of the things I really talk about, and we've actually just done a session on Friday, so it's really fresh for us, is like standards of an organization. And I was lucky enough to go into a few different environments where standards are very good and sometimes they weren't so good. But what I really know is that standards can't live from the top down. Yeah. You know, if my standards are the office stays tidy, you're here at this time, you have to do this, like all that sort of stuff, and no one in the group actually believes in that, then it's never going to happen. But what more importantly, it's not scalable. So if I'm away in Manchester for the day, if I'm here or there, and I'm not there to drive those standards, and then they just slip, that's not scalable. If there's a group of people who believe so much in the standards of the organisation and what that's going to do for the vision, and they're saying to you, hey, you said you were going to get that to me by midday, it's now the next day, or hey, we said we were going to tidy up after this thing, or whatever that thing might be. So we actually had an interesting session with Ben Earl, the England rugby player. He came in and did a teaching thing with us, and he talked about high-performance environments. And he talked a lot about this, but he also talked about we outline our standards and our culture of our business. Before people come, we say, this is what it is, this is what we're doing. You either sign up to this, or that's the door, or don't come, because this is what we're growing here. And within that, he talked about how they did their standard session. So we did it the same way as Saracens did, where we split up into groups of 4, sat down, we went through a number of like things like work ethic, timekeeping, like all these sorts of things, like how do people feel about it, what are the things that we should sign up to. And then tomorrow we're going through as a senior leadership, like plucking out all those things, going back to people and saying, hey, are we happy with this? We'll get everyone to sign it. And then we'll get new people who are joining to say, hey, these are the standards that the team has set. Yeah. They're not set by me. I wasn't in any of the meetings. That was all the team. Are you on board with this? Then, you can come into the organisation. Yeah.
And I think that relates really well to the other area that I really admire about Puresport and the way that you're growing and building it. And that is the clarity that you've got around values and the way that the values and also enemies, I know you have values and enemies, don't you, that fit into this whole brand architecture and also become part of the behaviours of the business. If you could just outline that a little bit.
So I think it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because it's something that I've come to know that we think about a lot deeper than a lot of people.
I think so.
And when we meet people and some of the meetings that we have and stuff, people are like, gosh, you guys think about that so deeply. But I think it comes from this place of we have a deep purpose of the problem that's out there, and that problem is the quick fix mentality. And like I sort of touched on, I mean, it's even getting worse, things like Ozempic and stuff like that. It's just like crazy. But so we have a deep purpose with the problem. We have a group of people who really align, with that purpose. But what we also recognize is that we live in a category, or we operate in a category that has no purpose. It's a category that's very functional. There's no emotion to it. It's very salesy. There's a lot of like race to the bottom on pricing and all these sorts of things. And I think what's interesting about that as a consumer category is in every other consumer category, there is a lot of emotion. But in sports nutrition, there sort of isn't. So it's kind of like this coming together of like, we love brand, we love, emotion, we love the problem that we're trying to solve. And we have like a really deep feeling about how the brand makes people feel. And I'd say that gives us the most buzz. I had this mad thing on the flight back from Chicago, sat next to this guy. He ran in Puresport socks.
No.
Yeah, so he saw my cap. He's like, you got a Puresport cap on? I was like, yeah.
No.
I was like, do you know the brand? He was like, yeah, I know the brand. I ran in the Puresport socks. And he showed me, I've got a video on my phone of him showing me the socks.
Amazing.
And so he was about 25, I reckon, maybe 26. And then on the left, the guy goes to me, are you guys speaking about Puresport?
No.
I was like, yeah, we're talking about Puresport. How come? And he's like, I keep wanting to buy their watermelon sachets, but they keep trying to drive me into subscription. And I was like, that is so mad that there's a 25-year-old running in the socks coming back to Chicago, and then this guy was 51, had just run a 2:53.
Wow.
And that the brand was resonating like, all the way
You
through.
told them, right? You told them
Yeah,
you was
yeah,
it,
I
right?
was, I worked there.
Yeah. Did you say I worked there? Or
Yeah.
Did you say I was
No,
CEO?
I was the CEO. And then,
Good.
But I also am quite bad for. So sometimes I don't do that because I'm like, oh, what do you think about it?
Yeah, of course. You want to go undercover.
Yeah. Oh, I saw this campaign. Did you think that was
Yeah,
good?
yeah.
I thought it was a bit rubbish. So I think again with the values, it wasn't like me going, oh, hey, here's our values, guys.
Yeah.
Learn them. It was, hey, these are we did them in 2021 as a first tab, and then we revisited them last year. And it was a lot of the same patterns, but we kind of reworded stuff that was more aligned with the team. And we let them come up with the things, what are the things that we're going to learn? What say, okay, great. Each thing's got a proper meaning behind it. Yeah. And then everyone in the team has to learn it. And everyone has to know them off by heart. And the last 4 people that have joined the business, they've known them off by heart they get it on day one. We even had an intern called Louise on. She came for 2 weeks on an intern thing. And she came to me on the 3rd day and said, Dan, and she's a French international student. She's like, Dan, I know the values. Yeah. I was like, really? And then she's like, yeah. And she wrote them down. So I think but what I say to the team is it's not just about learning the words and it's about learning what they mean, So within each one, there's things about what they mean. And then we refer back to them when we're decision making. So our sort of thing is like for the long run, up the top, our values. And then we talk a bit about the enemies and stuff like that, and how making sure we're positioning ourselves against them. And one of those is ego, because ego, as I've sort of talked about there, that can really kill a business when individuals are in it for themselves or not making the things that are right for the team. But we think about it on a really deep level, because we believe to build a category-defining business, it requires that kind of thought and purpose towards it.
And do you find that because you've been building the business in this way from the inside out, that's made it easier almost to find your tribe of customers? And I'll kind of answer my own question in a way, because the reason that you're sat here is because I followed you on LinkedIn, and obviously I knew about Puresport. In fact, one of my team used to run the Manchester Puresport run club, so we all know of Puresport. But it was when you started posting about For the Long Run that I was like, this is my kind of brand, and this is my kind of guy, and this is that really resonated with me. And so you're almost by default then, by living out your values, filtering through, these are our people. And I think that's what's really set Puresport apart. I guess if we go back to at that period of time when you were setting those values originally around 2021, was when Puresport was really kind of coming out as that community brand, as the origin of community run clubs. So just talk to me a little bit about how that happened.
Yeah. So I think I think in terms of finding that. So the way that the run club started was just around that we were just not exercising, because we were coming out of COVID and things, and we were like, we like exercising. We used to play rugby. We used to exercise all the time. And then so one run led to another run led to another, and then it's a few people are joining, and it's, this could be a thing. And then the next thing is 300 people in Battersea Park. We're like, gosh, but again, I've kind of spoke about this on other podcasts, we've never treated it as a commercial vehicle. It's always been something that we love. We're doing a run in Richmond Park on Friday night that we just put out yesterday. And I'm already buzzing about it, because you're running around in the thing, we're going to have head torches and stuff, meeting people. I think it's something that lives very authentically in the brand. One of our values is community, is our culture, belonging is our DNA. And, when you're looking for that, ultimately, what community is it? At its purest form is a group of people that have something in common. And us as humans in that tribe mentality, we want to belong to something. We want to belong to a work that resonates with us, our values, our sports team, a group of ultra runners, whatever that is. We want to feel like we belong there. And I think what's quite deep about Puresport is what we stand for. Actually, humans have known for the whole of our lives that it's good for us. If we put good things in our body, if we exercise and we have meaningful social connections with other human beings, that is good for us. And I think that's why when you interact with Puresport, when you come to our community events, hopefully you get a feel from me and stuff of you belong in our brand. Our brand is for anybody who's wanting to better themselves, who's wanting to show up, who's wanting to be with a group of people. And I think the reason that has caught wind is that feeling is very empowering.
Yeah.
You know, of like, if I'm in a group of 200 people or 50 people, or might be 20 people on Friday night, but these people are all the same person as me, and they're not having pints, they're out here running, or they're talking about signing up to this and that. I think that's what catches wind, because then everyone's like, oh, I went to this thing and I loved it. And I met this person who became my friend, or, you know, all that sort of stuff.
Do you feel like there's something different about the way that Puresport built that community very authentically by a group of you just starting out and going for a run, compared to, I hate to say it, but almost like every brand has a run club now?
Yeah, that's totally, yeah.
And I was having this conversation with Harriet, who was, as I was saying, works on our team and was an ambassador and for Puresport. Because I was talking to her this morning and obviously saying I was coming to interview you, and she was super excited. And I was like, well, what does Puresport mean to you? And she just went, community, like straight off the bat. And I was like, okay, well, kind of expand on that. And how does that differ? I asked her that question, how does it differ? And we had a conversation about how Puresport started as a run club, or felt like it started as a group of people that really genuinely wanted to come together, and the brand was the entity that they could exist within. Whereas there are other brands that started as the brand and then saw a run club as an add-on vehicle in order to sell more product. Yeah. And that's the outside in, inside out approach that differs.
Yeah, and I think like I don't know if we're lucky. We're probably lucky, but it's just in our DNA. Like we do stuff that's authentic to us, and if we don't do it. And if it feels good, then we'll do it. And that's why we're happy to do things that we can't track the data of or measure ROI on, because, you know, we believe if we can create a feeling in people of what we know that we can, then the knock-on long-wind effects of that are massive. Not only to maybe us as a business, but them as individuals, which I think is just as powerful. And so, that inside-out, outside-in marketing, the analogy is the perfect one. But I think with the nature of, you know, social media these days, you know, you having so much insight and behind the scenes, all these kinds of things, inauthenticity jumps out at you like I don't know, it's like something big. So, I think that's the difference. But it's also the difference if you came to our things versus other ones. You know, and we're like, oh, I just get it here. Like, they're fist bumping me at the door, they're buzzing. You know, they stand up and they do a talk, and they're not trying to ram electrolytes down my throat or anything. They're just like, they're here for the people. Whereas I think when you go to a lot of those ones, there's a lot of over commercialization. You know, lots of those.
Pose for the right photo so that we can use it on our Instagram.
All that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
I think that's the other thing, isn't it? Like, everything that that the brand stands for, and clearly you do as well, that's against quick fixes, is against this tide of social media where everything is, you know, just promised to you, and if you look a certain way or if you act a certain way, then everything will just come to you. And I think that, you know, you're constantly kind of pushing against that, aren't you? And that's against the quick fixes. And you mentioned things like Ozempic, you know, people thinking that they can just start an electrolyte brand and it will fly in the same way that Puresport has. Do you think that the tide's going to turn completely, and that everybody will just start seeing through all of that nonsense, and we'll get through that? I'm kind of asking you in a hopeful way. Like, tell me it will change.
Of course I'm hopeful. During the investment round that we did this year, they asked me, in 10 years if the New York Times you were on the front page, what would it say?
Oh, I love that question.
And within 5 seconds, I was just like, how Puresport inspired a global movement for the long run. And like, that's what I do think about. And I think that we have played a reasonable, if not significant, part in some of the stuff that's going on in the running community now, you know, with all the rise of run clubs and like all those sorts of things. Maybe not like from people seeing us, but people seeing us and then them getting into their running journey and then them starting their own thing. And we get messages like that all the time from people like, hey, I saw what was going on in London and I started my own. So I'm a delusional optimist, so I'm very hopeful. I think one of the things that's so interesting about health and wellness right now is British culture is very cynical, and it's very there's a lot of tall poppy syndrome, what we call in New Zealand, of like, once a poppy comes above the thing, like, people chop it down. And I think that comes from a whole lot of things. I think like the school system, like, you know, the divide and all those sorts of things where, you know, when someone's getting ahead in their business, they're like, oh, it's because their parents are rich. Or, oh, no, they got this lucky break and they did that and all those sorts of things. There's a lot of that going on. Whereas you go to America and it's just like, oh, my God, man, you can do anything. Like, I was there on the weekend and they're like, go into Starbucks. They're like, what can I get you, sir? You know, there's just this like inherent like optimism about the country. It's obviously got loads of problems as well. But I think on the business side, there's that thing. New Zealand's probably somewhere kind of in the middle. But I think what's so interesting about health and wellness now is 4 years ago when we were really starting to get into running, you know, people used to be saying like, oh, why are you running? Like, that's so lame. Like, why don't we go to the pub? Like, oh, I'm not coming for a run in Battersea Park on Sunday morning. I was out last night, or, you know, whatever that might be. But the move towards it has been so fast that actually the people who aren't doing it now are the ones on the outside. Yeah. So, you know, the people are going, oh, why is everyone running marathons? And they're trying to take the mick. And everyone's like, well, no. This is cool. Yeah, this is cool now. And I have a real, saying of like, there's in the last 5 years we've gone through a whole lot of stuff with like COVID and social media like really moving on and people trying to like show their best life on socials and all that sort of stuff. But over the next 5 years and hopefully longer, I think there's going to be nothing cooler in the world than being healthy. Yeah. And I think that is something that's really powerful. So I'm very optimistic. I think. You know, there's going to be a huge group of people that just don't do that. And this is like, I do have a bit of a thing about me that I think so much of the world is mentally weak. And I think it comes back to that like resilience, thing. And, I know that there's been a huge rise of mental health issues and stuff, which they need to be treated very seriously. And there's a whole lot of things around that. But for so many people, so many of these choices are just like mentally weak choices, And the thing is that makes me so hopeful about it is I meet people every week who are like, oh, I want to come for a 5K, but I won't be able to do it. Well, it doesn't matter, just come, and they come, and they might take 40 minutes, or they might take 50, they might take an hour. Yeah. But when they get back, they are buzzing, and they're so grateful. So
I almost feel like, sorry to interrupt, but I almost feel like that the quick fix, like inauthentic, like storytell that gets put out is the reason why people then feel that they can't do things because they know it's going to be hard and they fear the process and they fear the challenge of having to think, well, if I want to run 5K, I'm going to have to do a couch 5K program and that's going to take me 6 or 7 weeks and I'm going to have to keep doing it. And after 2 weeks, I'll stop because it's raining or there'll be another reason why I won't do it. And that's not fair because it looks so easy to everybody else. And I think that's where that disparity between what's real and what's portrayed is damaging. And people need to learn, in a sense, that the process is good, it builds resilience, overcoming challenge, doing a small thing every single day is going to benefit you. And it's not going to be easy, but that's the point. And I think the more that can be communicated and people can understand it is where, we're going to get a truly kind of healthy, positive community being built, which I guess is encapsulated in your For the Long Run, which you're even wearing today, your T-shirt.
Yeah, I love the quote from, I think I said to you when we spoke, from Kobe about I don't negotiate with myself. And if you just think about that and that you just live that for a week, it could change your life. And that doesn't have to be with like, exercise. It could be with like, hey, if I set my alarm for 7, I'm getting up at 7. I'm not doing the snooze to 7:09. And just those little things of like that they will start to build it.
You could just keep on almost turning yourself into a robot at times. That's the way I've been able to build it in. It's so interesting because in the last episode of this podcast, I spoke to my friend who'd just done his 24-hour track race, so running around a track for 24 hours. And I was crewing him, so I was there for every single point of it and saw the ups and the downs. And in the podcast, one of the things he was talking about was how at every single point from very early on, there was a constant voice in his head that was trying to move his goal one step down. So his first goal was to try and hit 200 kilometres. Then he was like, yeah, but you don't need to do that. You could just go 100 miles. Yeah, but you don't need to do that. You could just try and finish. You don't need to do that. And it's having the power to be able to push back, not negotiate with that voice and shut it down is something that you learn only through training. Because if he hadn't done the training and if he hadn't built up that mental strength, he would have gone, yeah, you're right. I've done enough. I can stop now. And I think that's such
I had this exact experience with Berlin Marathon. I was like, right, in the last 5.5, 6 years at Puresport, I'd never done anything for myself that I'd really committed to. I'd said, I want to do these things, but I'd always let Puresport get in the way. But I was like, right, for this Berlin Marathon, I'm going to lock in for 4 months, and I'm not going to let things come in the way. And it meant that I ended up doing most of my training after like 8 p.m. at night. I never missed a session, lots of late night stuff and things, and rocked up to Berlin, and it was just a terrible day. It was 27 degrees. It was horrible. I was struggling from like 6 kilometers in. I didn't know how much everyone else was struggling at the time, so I thought it was just me.
Just me, yeah.
What have I done wrong? And all this sort of stuff. And I missed my time by 24 minutes, and it was just like a very humbling, experience. But I look back on that as an experience because I committed to the training. I enjoyed the journey. I laid all the bricks. My wall's not fully built yet, but it's close, and I'll get there, hopefully in December. But yeah, I think that doing that, regardless of if you get that thing that you wanted or not, there's that pride in the work that I think is much more fulfilling at times.
And do you think that comes back to just having a really strong reason why?
Mm-hmm.
Lots of runners talk about their reason why. And I know that you're a fan of Simon Sinek as well, and that playing out through into the kind of true values of a business and why it exists. And do you have that inbuilt within you too?
Yeah, like people ask me why I wanted to go sub 3 in the marathon. And the reason I want to do it is because I want to show people that you can, if you commit to something and you put in the work, and even if you're balancing a job like I am and all that sort of stuff, like that is something you can do. I want to inspire my wife. Like I think that, doing things like that and her watching me do the training and being a part of that and supporting me through the journey and stuff like that, that's something. And I also know it makes me a better leader, having all that time to myself, not only the thinking time, but also that like exertion of not necessarily frustration, but energy and doing something for yourself. And I think, the knock-on effects of the team seeing like, oh, Dan's here in the office 60 hours a week, plus he's, trying to do fast marathons and he's going to the track at 8 p.m. on a Friday night and whatever. I know that that's something that in the office, gets people like, oh gosh, like we are doing something here. So, yeah, I'd say my thing wasn't like I want to go sub 3 because I want
to be able to put it on my Strava and get loads of kudos for it.
Yeah. So I think if that's your thing, then that makes it so much tougher.
Yeah, because when things do get difficult, having an intrinsic motivation, having a real belief that this is going to impact your life or inspire others is what's going to drive you through when it's hard, rather than, if your motivation to go sub 3 is just to get that PB on Strava, then when the voice says, it's really hot today though, Daniel, you're not going to get it anyway, you might as well stop. You probably are you're going to take the easy way out.
Yeah. And I did do that because I had the Chicago spot. So I was like, is this just a waste of energy and time and all of that stuff when I could just stop it halfway, have 3 weeks before Chicago and go again. But anyway, I ended up finishing it and we'll get it soon.
Yeah. And, I kind of wanted to share with you the reason why kind of for the long run, when I read it was so resonant with me, is that I did a lot of thinking before my 100 miler about my why, like seriously thinking, why do I want to do this? This is going to be really horrible and really hard. And I came up with this phrase, which is, I run to see how far I can go. And that to me is almost like my almost like kind of personal positioning of why I do these things, because it's obviously not about distance, because how far I can go, I don't know yet. I've no idea, because I've never really stopped. And if you think I'm just here to run a marathon to get a medal at the end, then that's somebody else's finishing line that they've set for you. Whereas actually, how far can you really go, not just in distance, but in yourself, and how much impact can you truly have by doing these things? And I think that's all about, I guess, taking the lid off your potential. And I can't think of a more exciting way to live your life than that. Yeah,
I totally agree. Yeah, I'm just such a big believer that humans are just so much more capable, than they think that they are. And actually, I think that, people like yourself, people like myself, I almost feel like we actually have this responsibility to try and embed that in others. Like you sort of said about, are we going to see this flip back from social media or the quick fix mentality way of living? If everybody now who was passionate about this sort of thing inspired or encouraged 5 friends to just get out and start doing it, let's sign up to a 10K together or all that sort of stuff, then that would truly, flip the switch on things. And I just think there's this special thing that happens when humans exercise together, whether it's team sport, whether it's, even individual sports where people play tennis against each other and the handshake at the end and like those sorts of things. But, that tribalism part of running that does exist. We've been doing it for thousands of years, and that pack mentality of running around with other humans and chatting and hearing the footsteps and all that sort of stuff. There's something in us that makes that special. So the more people we can encourage to do it, whether it's running, whether it's paddle, whether it's walking, whatever that might be, there's that moment that happens once you've done it together, the high fives, the smiling, that it's so special because we did something together, it raised our endorphins, we have that memory now. So
we were talking even before, weren't we, about like just watching a marathon in a city with all the signs and just being around that buzz and that energy, and like you can't stand at a race finishing line without crying. I can't. I think it's the most emotional place in the world.
It's awesome.
And
this is the thing. Like, if you want to if you want to live anything about what I'm talking about here, just go and watch London Marathon. It's the one day in the year that like restores my faith in the city because we spend all this time on these underground trains not talking to each other, and
it's like everyone's happy for one day, and then they go back underground.
Exactly. 1 million people come out and support a whole lot of strangers. And it's the most empowering feeling. And the fact that the sign-up numbers have gone 200,000, 800,000, 1.1 million, that's the massive knock-on effect. I also bet of those people watching being like, I want to do this.
Get caught up in the magic, don't they? So what's next? What's the the next 12, 24 months for the development of Puresport? Is the focus going to be on continuing product development, or the community? I know you're doing lots of bigger activations now as well. Where's your focus?
So I think where we kind of are is that we've known to build something big and something built on purpose, that we have to spend a lot of time doing that. So over this last 5 years, and it's kind of evolved and we've fine-tuned in things, but I think we have a very deep understanding now of like who we are and what we stand for and how we want to show up in the world. So there is that next phase of us of like, now we need to turn that into, not a hyper-growth business, because I think that can then spoil some of those things, but we do need to, sort of grow into the bigger set of shoes. And I think that's a really important phase that we're about to go on, and that's coming through new product development. That's going through like, how do we do stuff in the community that's maybe not just siloed to a small group of people in London, some of those bigger activations and things that we're, thinking about. But one of the things we're very, very lucky about with this community first brand is we almost let people tell us where we should go. We're actually doing some...
Let them decide.
We're doing some consumer studies at the moment. It's not consumer studies, consumer focus groups with some of our customers about new product development. Here's what we're thinking. What do you guys think? We had one last night with like some of our best customers, and it's just so interesting to hear people talk. And I think... our mission in the business is to be the best running supplement brand in the world, and we define best by a number of sort of trackable things. But what I talk about is like, that's our base camp. Our Everest is actually to be like the athletic support brand for everything that people need for before, during, and after exercise. So running is the niche that we are owning. I think it provides a great platform to like venture out from. But really, we want to be, a brand that is across all sports. And Nike have been a great footprint for that, owning running, now the biggest outside of that, and running's something that everyone can relate to, so it provides a good base. So I say over the next 12 months there's going to be some really exciting product development. We're coming out with the running gels in 2 weeks' time.
Great.
2 weeks, just under 2 weeks' time. We've got a few other things in the pipeline for next year. We're bringing a few senior people into the business at the moment. There's a bit of growing up going on for us, if you call it like that. But always but I think really staying focused on the UK. We really want to focus on that for the next 14 months. The people that we're looking up at, the MyProteins, the Bulks, the Science and Sports, those kinds of people, they are, 30 to 500 million revenue brands. And so there's a lot of space for us to grow there. But also I think what's so exciting is they are just such incumbent grandfathers in the space that... I feel
like you're the challenger coming through.
Yeah, definitely.
Just to ruffle some feathers.
Big time. We call ourselves the Robin Hood of the supplement industry. We say what we're doing is good, but we don't care how we get there.
Well,
so,
because the road, you don't have to follow the blueprint that other people have set. We've already proved that.
Yeah.
You are doing things differently.
Yeah, and like I think if you truly want to inspire change, you do have to be different. But being different is hard, and being different means that you get a whole lot of people who pop up behind you who are now following the different path, and all those sorts of things. But I think one of the exciting things about what's going on in the world right now is global, sports supplements is a $40 billion category. In 2035, it's going to be an $80 billion category. So even if we don't take any market share off anybody else, there's enough.
There's growth for
everyone.
everyone.
There's huge growth for everyone. So our number one value in the business is we run our own race. And we talk about that because you can get it's important that you look around and you know what's going on, but you can be so distracted by all of that stuff. And there's such a great opportunity for us. If we just run our own race, then we could be something special.
I love that too. I'm almost jealous. I keep trying to make all of our, at my agency, I keep trying to make all of our values and principles like running related. And every time I say these new phrases to people, they're just like, Claire, stop making everything a running thing. And you could just say,
Well, one thing is that I'd recommend if anyone's going to do this or you do that is to record all the conversations.
Yeah.
Because there is just so many little sound bites that come up. I mean, For the Long Run came about because we were going to do a 3 for 2 campaign for Black Friday.
Yeah.
And we were going to call it In It for the Long Run.
Yeah.
And, Black Friday, get 3 months worth, get a jump start on January in the new year, start now sort of a thing. And then we're like, In It for the Long Run, that's good.
Actually encapsulating.
Yeah, and then we're like, what about just For the Long Run? And then we're like, oh gosh, and we were trying to do trying to find this North Star for us at the time. And when we put it into WhatsApp, every situation in which we used it, that was what we wanted it to be for Puresport.
Yeah.
Like that's how we wanted it to make people feel. Like me texting James and being like, come on, man, this isn't about like one quick thing. It's about us being here for the long run, or about saying to people like, make sure that they know that if they want the product benefit, they're going to have to stick in it for the long run and stuff like that. And we just looked at these WhatsApps and we were like, this is it.
Yeah. I love that. There's nothing more authentic than that, is there?
And
it was already there right under your nose.
Yeah, and there's so many sound bites that come out of those, kinds of meetings.
Yeah, I'm going to start recording conversations. That's really clever. And what about you, though, like from a personal perspective? That's kind of Puresport and the ambition. What about you, Daniel? Where do you feel that your potential might be? What do you think could be like next is your focus, or conversely, like what do you think your legacy will be or your impact?
Yeah, I've always had this like weird feeling about myself that I'm capable of leaving change on the world, and I think we're that. We've been very fortunate to do that with Puresport. Is the bigger we are and the more that we grow and all those sorts of things, the more positive impact we have on people's lives. For some people, that's through hearing a strap line. Some people may see a piece of content that we put out and they're in the somewhere else in the world. We have some remote video editors in the Philippines who have all taken up running now, and they send us pictures in the group of them in their socks and things like that. And that's a very empowering feeling. And I think, one of the tough things about being obsessed about something is you can become a bit of an outsider to your friends because they maybe don't understand how deep of the level is the thing that you're trying to do. And all my friends think I'm crazy, like, because I'm a workaholic and I'm at the office all the time and, I'm working on weekends, all that sort of stuff. But I find that very empowering that, A, work in doing that, but also like, I'm not someone that necessarily like believes it's my destiny, but I feel like that's what I could leave on the world.
Yeah.
And if we go through and we become in the next 10 years a category defining business and we've served 30 million people, our products, and they've been a part of the journey, and we've done that, and, even conversations like this, conversations like I had with the people on the plane on Sunday, like that is very inspiring. So I don't know where that feeling comes from. I don't think it's maybe something that's justified through like something that happened to me or something like that, but it probably comes from that deep optimism that humans are inherently good, we are capable, we can do anything, so like let's put the work in and do something together kind of feeling, I'd say.
I feel like if more of us were delusional optimists, then the world would probably be a better place.
Do you want me to tell the Rome thing?
Oh yeah, can you tell me the Rome thing?
I can tell the Rome thing. Because I think that's also like something that like, it probably articulates in the story like how I feel about pure sport, and when people like, and that's just reminded me of like you feeling maybe drawn towards it, is when we were looking for the long run. We have a guy who's on our board now, Robert Senior. He's an amazing career in marketing. He did the Cadbury ad, did the Sony ad with the bouncing balls in San Francisco. And I went to him and I told him that I thought we'd had it, and we were looking at Better Than Yesterday at the time, and we felt like that wasn't maybe it, but that there was like something in and around that. And he's like, yeah, I don't really think that's it, but he's like, can I tell you a story about what I think about pure sport? And he referred to the gladiator scene where Maximus is talking to Caesar right at the start. They're like fighting in Romania or something like that. And Caesar says to Maximus, why are we fighting? And he says, oh, we're fighting for Rome. And he says, oh, you speak of Rome, but you have never been there. Like, Rome is lost, Rome is gone, you know. And Maximus, like, cuts him off, which is a big thing to cut off Caesar. And be like, no, do not speak of Rome like that. Rome is hope, Rome is the light. And the place he was coming from was like, I've got people dying out here for Rome. Don't say that it's not that. And then he says to him, oh, well, you speak of Rome, but you have never been there. And he goes, Rome is hope, Rome is the light. And Robert said to me, that's how he feels about pure sport, is like, he doesn't really know why people are drawn to it, why there's this like feeling around it, but people are. So whatever you kind of come up with, make sure it like feels like that it's Rome to people. And I think when you think about that, we've kind of covered some of that stuff today of like this inherent good in people, this like putting good stuff, exercise, connection, all these sorts of things of what we embody. People are drawn to that. I think we find that we have a bit of a slower build probably because, you know, cool things pop up and lots of more trendy, cool-driven people are always driven to the next cool thing and then they jump around. But I think when we deeply connect with our audience and people get to hear, you know, a bit more about why we do it and how we do it, I think people do feel like that. And then, anyway, sure enough, we went away. We came up with For the Long Run. I went back to him and said, I've got it. And he sort of said, well, tell me what it is. Then I said, oh, For the Long Run. And he looked and he just went, that feels big. And yeah. Yeah,
I love that. I think the humans, we ultimately are looking for hope and light, aren't we? Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing so much with me today. I have no doubt and question over the ability of pure sport to continue to grow in the way that it has, not least because the way that you're doing it is truly authentic and is driven by purpose and impact. And I can't really see other brands doing that in quite the same way. And having spoken to you and having met you, you really are the embodiment of that. And I can see that you really, truly, truly believe that there is so much potential to change. And that's super exciting as a customer and as a runner, very importantly, and just someone that, you know, is inspired by change as well. So thank you for sharing so much. And thank you for travelling up to Manchester to have this conversation with me in person.